Video, we're going to talk you through two different scenarios about layoffs, right? Because you could be next up for a layoff, companies are continuing to lay people off for a variety of reasons. We're going to look through an experience of a junior employee, which is this Deloitte example, then a senior employee, which is a Citigroup example. Now, these are all the signs you should look out for when it comes to layoffs and how to plan ahead and how to navigate those very difficult scenarios. So let's learn from this junior employee first. Firstly, he was talking about his education. He said he decided to do a double major in business and accounting because he knows that's how to make money and how people typically live good quality lives. And he wanted to help his parents out and do better for himself and not worry about, costs of living and so on. So I would say this is not necessarily the best approach. I know typically people are at university and they think, what's going to be the high paying jobs? Of course, you should avoid certain studies like liberal art degrees, like history and things like that might not pay well, like doing an English literature degree. Just because it interests you, they don't typically pay well. But what you could do is actually pick up in terms of the best approach when it comes to what's going to pay well and what you have a good interest in, right? Because sometimes people just pick what is the high paying job, even though they might not be the best skilled at it. This guy might have had the skills that would be more tailored to tech instead of accounting. So always think carefully about what you're going to be studying and how much studying you're going to do, because lots of people, they do these qualifications. He's done a double major in business and accounting. You should really think about, that's a good use of your money and your time. How much debt are you putting yourself in? Could you learn these skills at a much lower cost, online courses, rather than doing these expensive jobs, these expensive qualifications, that end up actually costing a lot of money to do and don't necessarily result in a high income. Then he says, I knew other people who got internships, but I didn't manage to land one despite going to many of the Meet the Firm events, attending presentations, doing mock interviews, and submitting applications. So this is an interesting part because what he's kind of realizing that there is an element of black pill, if you're familiar with the term black pill, which is when it comes to, careers. A lot of careers and getting those opportunities are about connections, about whether you're popular, whether you're charismatic, not necessarily your skills. So you have this double major in business and accounting. It wasn't really helping him get some of the opportunities, right? Because he wasn't maybe playing the corporate game, even at some of these networking events, coming across like someone who'd fit in socially with the other co-workers. And these are the type of things that they look for, right? So the whole concept is that it's a big club and you're not in it. It's an exclusive club and you're not in it if you don't fit in with some of the co-workers and their favoritism. Then he mentions here, I thought for hours of what to wear for my first day. I was choosing my, tie, shirts and so on. And also that he remember walking in and not feeling like he fit in. So this is what I mean about things being a social environment at work, even though you're focused on all these type of things, right? He mentions that he was so focused on grasping corporate culture that he didn't focus on the actual accounting work. He was focusing on becoming friends with senior management rather than doing the work. And then he mentions here when he got into Deloitte, he was surrounded by people from much more senior, more well-recognized educational establishments like Yale, and all the schools he didn't get into. So he thought his relationship building skills would typically carry him through, but they didn't work, basically. The strategy of focusing on perception, which typically you think would work, the strategy of kind of focusing on relationship building, it didn't really work out for him, And the point is that they just probably saw him as someone who didn't socially fit in. And of course, he mentioned he should have focused a bit more on the accounting work itself. So there's a lot going on here. And when you have a scenario where you're dealing with a potential layoff, you have to read in between the lines. Why did they say this? Why were managers favorite with other people and not you? Because I've worked at any top finance firms, if you're new to the channel, like Goldman and Morgan Stanley and things like that. And you'd have people that would have gone to Yale, who'd gone to Harvard, who'd be in the same friendship group, gone to MIT. They all know each other. They're all accustomed to a similar culture, and then they tend to form cliques at workplace environments that might not benefit you. You might be on the outskirts of that because you didn't go to some of those universities, and then all of a sudden the hard work you put in your education, it doesn't really pay off. The social game at work, you might not be getting a fair ride in that. So all of these things just result in people being disillusioned and being essentially put up for a layoff, in addition to maybe not doing great quality work, as he seems to suggest here. When it comes to getting set up for the layoff, it mentions, my senior manager asked me what was happening for a few months before I was let go. I told her generally about some personal stuff, and she said, yeah, I know you're going through a lot, but you should get work done on time. Now, there's a lot going on. Like I say, there's probably scenarios that he doesn't pick up on because he's kind of junior at this time dealing with this. You know, maybe he is doing good quality work and other people are being late on meeting deadlines, and that's impacting him because he's getting work delivered to him late. Maybe the managers are just coming up with reasons to get rid of him. Lots of people can't pick up on the narrative being manufactured around them, which is typically not based on actual issues, performance issues, just that there could be all types of reasons they want to get rid of you. Then it says here, one day I went to the office and had something scheduled on my calendar. I went to the meeting. It was my manager and HR, and then you were being let go due to performance issues. Now, as I say, that's the typical scenario. These companies want you to value them. Oh, Deloitte is such a super important company. It's so great to work there. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in a sense, one day, they're just firing you. They just see you as disposable and they say, just get out of here. So this is typically how it works. That's why you should never create some kind of delusional aura of how good it'd be to work at Google, which I'll cover in a future video very soon, or Deloitte, or any of these big companies. They really don't value you, and they're really completely redundant as a place to work, to be honest. But if you want to make some quick money while working for a corporation before they see you as disposable, it is an option. Now, there is a happy ending here, right? So you can see him standing right here. I think that's with his wife. And the happy ending here is that he tried different things. And this is what you should do if you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to just focus on your side hustle. The first thing might not work, but you've got to try something else. So in that case, firstly, you might think, you know, he just developed an app, which is quite cool. He developed an app to help people understand financial literacy and develop their finance skills. That didn't kind of work out. And then he worked for another company. He worked for Dropbox. He makes $300K a year, which is a lot of money, but he's living in an expensive location. And they have 6-month parental leave, so he spent 6 months with his child when the child was born. These are kind of good options. So there are happy endings. There are happy endings to corporate stories. It's not like everyone has to go and, you know, set up their own business and have a side hustle. So this is a case where workplace culture does kind of matter. And it really is, like I say, a social game. Because I think if he could do the job at Dropbox quite well, he could probably do a similar thing at the other company, Deloitte. But social skills and your ability to fit in does matter, right? He mentions, I don't look back at the things and wish I'd done things differently. Everything happens for a reason. Maybe if I hadn't let go, I wouldn't have started the financial literacy app or gotten a job at Pandora. So he worked at a few different companies. Now, the key thing here is, what can we really learn from this? If you don't fit in, it really can cost you your job, right? If you do good work and you don't fit in, the social game is everything. Now, through no fault of your own, you could be put up for a layoff. That's why I don't want people to feel guilty or bad about a layoff. You know, people can be put up for a layoff for all types of reasons that have nothing to do with their work. No point you feeling bad about your ability to do the job. And then I'm normally critical of DEI, but there are cases where DEI or, you know, looking out for people for different backgrounds does make sense. He mentions here, in his new job, I really look to focus on the psychological safety of my team. And I think it's important for groups that are first generation of white collar employees, people of color and so on. And he tries to elevate them and give them recognition, right? Because he's a team leader. Now, these are quite important things to show, right? Firstly, looks like he developed team skills or social skills because he became a team leader from being quite a junior employee who didn't fit in socially at Deloitte. Now, it is important in a sense to being able to help people from different backgrounds who might be uncomfortable in the corporate environment, given there's so many different social rules these days about what you can and can't say, how you can conduct yourself with people. So I'm kind of happy for him that, look, he does look like that's his wife and his pet dog, that he managed to figure it out and find some happy resolution to his life, which typically lots of people don't find. So let's compare that to another example. Here we have a Citigroup employee who's more senior. This is an executive, they're at a senior role, and they seem to be let go for reasons that are very suspicious, right? In the sense that they didn't do anything wrong. So let's look at this example a bit closer. Here it says that Citigroup alleges that the former managing director was suing the bank for firing. They were fired due to performance reasons based on what Citigroup says, but the employee, Kathleen, says the bank was asking her or operating in a way that was giving the regulator, the financial regulator, which is the government regulator, false information. So she fired a lawsuit against them. She was a managing director, so she's quite senior. She was helping them with data issues. And what they ended up doing is asking her to hide critical information from the regulator in America. So this would be tantamount to close to illegal activity for the company, hiding very important information from the regulator. So it has all these type of scenarios that are quite suggestive that she was doing the right thing. She was not doing something that would be illegal. She was trying to do the right thing, right? Not do something that would be considered illegal or improper conduct, which is like the financial definition of coming close to breaking the law. The lawsuit alleges that she wanted to hide that she thinks the company wanted to hide information because it made the bank look bad, and she was fired in retaliation for her complaints. Now, this is the thing, right? If you are doing the right thing and not playing by some of the corporate manipulation or putting yourself in a difficult position where the bank is asking you to do something that would be very questionable, and you could be dragged into court for it by the financial regulator, this can be leveraged against you. So you're kind of put in a catch-22 situation. Do you raise a complaint against the employer, against the bank you're working for, and then they fire you, or say you have a performance issue and then get rid of you? Or do you take the other path and do the improper conduct that they want you to do, and then maybe it works out now, but a few years down the line, the regulator looks into it and then you're dragged into a lawsuit about it. So it's a very tricky scenario, and I think she did the right thing by raising this issue. And even if they did fire her, they probably gave her for her decent layoff package. And, you know, in part of that agreement of leaving, she probably would be asked not to raise these issues or flag those issues. So you really got to do the right thing. You'll be caught up in all these scenarios that you think you go to work and you're going to go work and work hard and do a good job and get paid decent. And maybe if there's a budget cut for the company because they're not doing well, then you'll be laid off. But all these other type of scenarios are really what you get caught up in. It's like completely ridiculous. It has nothing to do with your ability to do the job. Then there's an important point here where it said the bank was already dealing with her performance issues before she flagged these issues, and that was the reason for the firing. So they're saying it was really a performance issue they were flagging before she mentioned anything or gave any negative feedback about the company through their whistleblowing procedure and so on, right? So this is what I mean. The system can warp any narrative against you, for against you in terms of layoffs, right? They might be like, oh, well, actually, they didn't take the feedback that we provided. You didn't make the improvements that were required. Typically, when they say stuff like that, they can really manufacture any narrative against you. And they can just say, oh, you're not doing a good job, things like that. They can sense if you don't want to play by the rules or play by these warped rules that are against you, they'll start manufacturing that narrative. Now, what we got to learn is here that the employee was correct. The employee was correct. In the end, the bank was fined for this process. They were fined for doing something improper that they were asking this employee to do. The bank was fined $136 million around this type of issue. So what the employee said was correct. Now, the employee's not going to get a payout. The employee's not going to get like a cut of those $1 million fines from the financial regulator. Essentially, the company's done something improper. They asked the employee to play along with it. The employee didn't, and that was leveraged against them and used as a reason to fire them. So what can we kind of learn from this scenario? What we can learn is that if a company asks you to do something improper, you've got one or two options. You could either launch a complaint, which will typically lead to your layoff and a payout, or you can do the incorrect thing with the hopes that a few years down the line, the financial regulator or whichever governing body analyzes your industry does not leverage that against you personally, right? So being a good, honest worker will get you fired. And the narrative about your performance can be manufactured easily by the company as positive or negative. It just depends what they want to do. Depending on how slavish you are to the company, how much you're willing to submit and compromise your and even your own, freedom and legality, that's how much they'll pay you and be loyal to you. They're not loyal to you on the basis of how hard you work or how good quality work you do. So those are two very important lessons for you to learn if you are thinking about, what type of layoff scenarios and how they might set you up, particularly as we go into next year where the economic situation is only going to get even worse. So if you're looking for tailor-made career advice in these difficult scenarios, feel free to reach out to me, link in description. I can speak with you directly and help you out. Let me know in the comments how you feel about these two stories. The guy who managed to find a happy ending to himself after dealing with a dysfunctional situation at Deloitte, And this female employee, Kathleen, who is essentially sued for performance issues based on what the company says, but looking at all the real circumstances and how the story ended, clearly it was linked to the company not doing its job as it said and doing improper things. Thanks for listening. 2 recommended videos on your screen right now. Link in description to seek out my career advice, and I'll see you next time.